And we are live. Welcome to the Stochastic DFS Showdown show. I was trying to think of what Josh says, and I didn't think it through long enough because he always says, we are live. Welcome. Oh, The Process. That's his show. Welcome to the
And now his mic isn't working. But you're for whatever reason your mic just turned off, EMac. Whatever you just said didn't come through. So we've come to, you don't know what show we're on. Your mic doesn't work. The good thing is we started on time though.
Yeah, perfect. How is the mic now? Is it
now
back?
It's good. Now it's good.
Okay. I think I'm on the work computer, so the settings are a little different. We bounce in between Zoom and Teams, and now we get Slack. I did a Slack huddle for Stochastic yesterday. It just becomes just an absolute S show, if you will. But we're here. We have a 4-game slate. Most teams are on back-to-back. We've got some injury questions, but not to fear. We're coming back tonight at 6 o'clock to hit everything on Live Before Lock. But the beauty of these DFS strategy shows, especially for those of you that work during the week and don't catch a lot of these during the work week, we can talk through how to read a slate, how to utilize our tools, how to be prepared for when things change. And these are little things you file away because we see most of the Eastern and Western Conference are playing each other 5 times this year, right? Because of the way they've done scheduling. And you're going to see a lot of games where they have what we call the baseball back-to-back, right? They go to a city, play them on a Friday, play them on a Sunday, play them on Thursday, play them on a Saturday, etc. So it's something that you can pick up little tidbits. And even if something tweaks because someone was out or rested or got the flu or whatever, you file that away. It helps you during the sub slates, and it helps you during those last minute things when we're not on the air. And if you're not behind the scenes getting the Stochastic tool as well, tisk, shame on you, but that helps you out as well. Greg, it's been a hot minute since we've done a show together. How are you, my friend?
It's been a couple of weeks. It hasn't been that long. We did the Sunday Night Football show with each other. It's been a minute since we did a basketball show together, and not only doing one, because I've got all different kinds of content. I'm doing the strategy show with you. I've got the NFL show I'm doing with Neil in a little bit, and then tonight joining you again for another NBA show. So yeah, I've got a day full of different slates, talking different sports with different guys. But yeah, always good to chop it up with you, EMac.
Absolutely. And I'm only wearing multiple hats with the writing. I've got the 2 NBA shows. I got an NBA article that'll be out around 1 o'clock. And then I'm writing up halfway through Saturday Night Football. If you guys tune into NBA Live Before Lock, once we hit lock, 7 o'clock, everything's compressed tonight. 2 games at 7, 1 at 7:30, and 1 at 8. Well, after that, the slate lock, we'll talk a little showdown because we have the Houston Texans taking on the Indianapolis Colts, with both teams having a chance not only to make the playoffs, but if Jacksonville loses tomorrow, one of the winner of tonight's game has the tiebreaker. They will be able to be the AFC South champions. So a lot of moving parts today. Should be a fun one. But let's jump on in here, Greg. Fortunately, we've already made up most of our time and talked through everything that we usually wander around for the first 10 minutes of a show anyway. But let's talk about our 4 games. Tonight, we will remind everybody that we are sponsored by Better. We'll talk about them as well. But the key thing you want to know, sign up through our link below us here in chat, and I will drop it into the YouTube chat as well. That is the link in the YouTube description. I'll drop it in chat. $500 deposit match. We are not seeing that very often. We're not seeing it anywhere else at this time. And that is something you want to take advantage of. This is like the other pick'em sites. Their little twist is that you can go up to 8 questions or props on your card, pays out 100x. That's their unique twist. They also have some fun with little promos that they run throughout the day and week as well. But Adam, let's get into the fun stuff here. The Boston Celtics. Happy birthday, Adam. The birthday boy is out and about. I have done so many Saturday shows with him. I have done more Saturday shows with him than anybody in history. So default there. But Greg, or as I refer to you in our tweet out there, Nerd Ass Greg. You're also third leg Greg. You carry a lot of monikers. We have the Boston Celtics, 6-point favorites going into Indiana, taking on the Pacers. This is a back-to-back for the Celtics. Last night, they crushed Utah 126-97. That was in Boston. No starter topped 27 minutes. The Jazz emptied the entire bench, literally their entire bench. 13 different players played 12 minutes or more last night for the Jazz. So this one was kind of a laugher. Pacers, well, they just finished up their season series against Milwaukee, 4-1. Think about that. Each of the last 2 years, the Pacers have looked like, are we tanking? Are we trying for the play-in tournament? They just beat Milwaukee 4 out of 5 times so far this season. 248 implied point total here. This is the questionable things we have for Indiana are Nembhard, who has missed the last 2 games with a sore back, and then Aaron Nesmith left last game with an ankle injury during the game. They're both listed as questionable. We'll have to see what's up. And then on the Boston side, Horford did not play last night, probably will be available tonight. And with how good Indiana has been, I don't know that Boston's going to be wanting to give any of their core players a night off. Greg, Adam today, take this away for us. Talk about the Celtics.
Yeah, so starting with the Celtics, and I've got the Sims on screen, guys. So ran some Sims using the data that we had, and that was why we waited a couple of minutes in the morning while we started late. We were just waiting for a projections update so we could everything run and show it on screen for you. That, and it's a 4-game slate, so we weren't going to be going the full hour anyway. So might as well wait to have all the data so we can give you guys the best possible information. As for Boston, I agree with you. EMac last night, Horford rested. My assumption is that he plays today. Something else that should help. We have seen Boston rest players a good amount this year on back-to-back situations, but because last night's game, as you mentioned, was such a lopsided blowout, my best guess is that we do see everybody play here for Boston. They ended up winning, was it 125-97 against Utah? None of the starters had to play in the fourth quarter. Jason Tatum went nuts. Looked like he was going to be optimal by a mile on last night's slate, and then what happens? He hardly plays in the second half. So my opinion is that we're going to see everybody play for Boston. Can I say that with 100% certainty? No, so we do need to check some of the injury news later on in the day. But at least as for now, we've got everybody projected in. And the core guy to get to here is going to be Jaylen Brown for us in our data. There is a little bit of a depressed price for Jaylen Brown relative to his peak. And this is as good of a matchup as it possibly gets. You talked about the total in this game, which, by the way, total and stuff like that, the betting odds, it's all incorporated into our projections. So if you guys are ever looking at a game and you're saying this game is a really high total, therefore I want to get more players from this game, you want to make sure you're not double counting it because this is already taken into account in our projections. But this is a game that has a lot of scoring upside. Hardly getting to any of Jason Tatum as a pay-up option. We currently like other players on the high end a little bit better. But Jaylen Brown, the player that is standing out the most right now for Boston, it is a really good spot against the Pacers and what should be a very fast.
All right. Now, how are you feeling about the Pacers? Because when Tyrese Halliburton is at the helm of this offense, they are essentially peerless. We like to laugh about their defensive efficiency, yet they still have a slightly positive net rating, which means their offense is even better than their, very fantasy-friendly defense. This has been something sort of out of left field. It's like Halliburton has taken 2 giant steps forward this season instead of just one, building off last year's strong showing. But we have seen in games without him, this whole offense kind of falls apart. When he's not on the court for his portions of the game, you have TJ McConnell, you have some of their other guards that can keep things moving and going reasonably. But when he's out for the whole game, the whole team just kind of falls apart. How do you feel about him? Tougher matchup going against the Celtics. They, of course, we've seen with the addition of Jrue Holiday, with Kristaps Porzingis, et cetera, an already good defensive team has gotten better with players that are able to switch up and down all 5 positions.
Yeah, I mean, the key, especially because this is a 4-game slate, Mac. I know you mentioned Halliburton. Halliburton very, very regularly looks underowned in our data and projections. I can't remember the last time there was a slate where I ran everything through our Sims where I didn't get overweight to Tyrese Halliburton. So that's the case once again today. We've got Halliburton projected for 20% ownership, ran everything through, got him in 32% of lineup. So a good amount overweight to the field on Halliburton. But in addition to that, we have injuries on the Pacers side of the game, which you had mentioned. Andrew Nembhard, questionable. Aaron Nesmith, also questionable. So we have to find out, where is the potential value if those guys get ruled out on a big slate? If it's 13 games, like Aaron Nesmith being out wouldn't really have all that much of an impact, but it certainly does matter on a 4-game slate where there's limited options. There's limited places that we could be going for value. And so that's why that we're looking at these injuries being pretty significant for this slate. So if Nembhard is out, we've seen some extra minutes go to TJ McConnell. I'm not exactly sure what his ownership would look like if Nembhard is out, because I can't tell the future or anything, EMac. I can tell you that he would project better for sure, but I do get a little bit concerned how high owned would McConnell end up being, because he was fairly popular last night, and that was on a bigger slate. So he would definitely be a good option, just not exactly sure what that ownership would end up being. I assume McConnell will be quite chalky, though, if Nembhard doesn't play. As for Aaron Nesmith, if he is out, I think we could expect more playing time minutes to go to Obi Toppin. And the front court minutes have been very difficult to nail down for the Pacers. Like sometimes it's Toppin, sometimes it's Jalen Smith, sometimes it's Aaron Nesmith that ends up playing more minutes. But I really do think that Toppin is somebody who we could see get really extended run in this matchup. If Aaron Nesmith doesn't play, Toppin's only $4,500. So he's somebody who would look much better in the situation where Nesmith is out. As things currently stand, mentioned that we're overweight here to Halliburton. Isaiah Jackson's always an interesting tournament option to me, especially on a small slate, because he's such a good fantasy producer, and he's never all that expensive either. If we look at Isaiah Jackson, he is priced at $4,100. If you get in a scenario where he is going to benefit from potential blowout, or maybe Miles Turner gets some early foul trouble, which happens like once a week. How often do you say Miles Turner gets into foul trouble, Matt? It seems like it happens more often than not.
It happens more often than not, but the challenge is a lot of the games when the games where it doesn't happen, he's only getting like 2 fouls, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little different than it was 3 years ago when we kind of were teasing, calling Miles Turner. I wish I'd come up with this pun, calling him the odometer, but that was not mine. But that is really a funny one. I was so sad I never thought of that. But he is someone that has seen their overall point per 36 foul rate continue to come down. But there are games where he just picks up ticky-tack fouls. He gets frustrated. Things go out of whack. He gets some questionable calls that don't land on his side. And all of a sudden, he's staring at 4 fouls after 22 minutes, right? And those are the games, or when they sequence, that can really put the kibosh on his minutes, because God forbid, an NBA coach actually let a player ever foul out during a game. You got to protect them from never fouling out, it seems. But he is someone that, if you go look at his numbers, the bad games, more often than not, were either he just wasn't getting any buckets or he hit foul trouble. But then you can't find a really consistent pattern if you start to look up and down. It's an interesting vagary of him becoming a more experienced player, but still falling into bad habits from time to time.
But the important thing is just the chance that he could get into foul trouble. Isaiah Jackson, just for reference, we have Jackson projected for 17 and a half minutes and over 20 fantasy points tonight. You guys see here, barely over, but still 20.01. On a small slate like this, if something happens where Isaiah Jackson goes from 17 and a half minutes to, let's say, 22 minutes, because he's such a good fantasy producer, then you're looking at a guy who's projected for like 26, 27 fantasy points. At his price point, that's a great looking GPP play for a 4-game slate. So that's really what I have my eye on. Tyrese Halliburton, great pay up option. Isaiah Jackson, interesting tournament play. And we have to keep our eyes out for Andrew Nembhard and for Aaron Nesmith injury news.
Yep. And then one other thing I do want to call out, if you're looking at our projections, just say, oh my God, they just talked about TJ McConnell. Why do they only have him projected for like 5 fantasy points? It's because when everybody's healthy, he has fallen out of the rotation. He is sort of their veteran. He knows his role. When the playoffs come around, he's going to get, some key minutes backing up Halliburton, et cetera. But he understands that, hey, if I'm go use me when you need me. But the last 3 games, he's averaging about 20 minutes per game. The 3 prior to that, 12, 7, and 4. That's minutes, not fantasy points. So when everybody's healthy, he kind of gets the short shrift, but he is there to step in at any time. But that's one that when you learn how to read the slate, hey, if Nesmith or Nembhard is out, that's going to put minutes more likely earmarked towards McConnell. So keep that in mind. Anything else from this game? And I almost said Adam. Boy, I am just on a Saturday mindset here. Happy birthday, Adam. Hope the strip club was good to you last night. Let's hit the New York side, and then we'll have some fun with some of our other accoutrements here. The Knicks favored by 9 going into Washington, taking on the Wizards, 238.5 implied point total. Depending if you're looking at 5, 10, 15 full games, the Wizards are usually going to be a bottom 5 defense. They are playing at a top 5 pace, depending on which way you're slicing and dicing the data. And they've just been a disaster. They lost two games in Cleveland, Wednesday, and then again last night. The Wednesday game was just a complete debacle. I think it was 141, 100 or 140, 101. No Wizard played. Let me see my notes. No Wizard played more than 23 minutes in that. Last night, no Wizard played more than 26 minutes. This team is finding new and creative ways to tank. Now they're just not playing their players a lot. They're trying to get more minutes to their worst players, and they don't have that many good players. So it gets real tricky looking at them. For the Knicks, this is a 3-4 as well as a back-to-back. They handled their business last night. In Philadelphia, they knocked off the Sixers 128-92. You had OG Anunoby, who recently was traded last Saturday around this time from Toronto to New York. He played 37 minutes. Isaiah Hartenstein played 35. Excuse me. Jalen Brunson played 32. And Julius Randle, usually a stalwart for minutes, he only needed to play 30. So those guys should all be good tonight. But at this point, can we even trust the Wizards to put up anything even remotely competitive in a competitive fashion? And if they even are showing glimpses of that, Adam, it feels like the coach has now been told, no, put that fire out immediately if your players start playing well. What do you want to do with this, and why is it all Knicks all the time?
So first, I'm just going to change my legal name to Adam, because then you're right. I think my parents were wrong, EMac. I think you're right. I think I am Adam.
Oy, Bay.
I'm Adam now.
Good times. All right, you're Adam for today.
Yeah, I'm just Adam now. So if we look at the Knicks, we're getting a ton of exposure to this team. And by the way, all the games have relatively high totals on this slate. All of the games we're looking at have total 238 or higher. So you might look at like, hey, Knicks Washington. Hey, the Knicks are expected to score a lot of points. Yeah, so is every other team. The totals for these games are 248, 239, 238, 238. But this matchup against the Wizards is particularly good for the reasons you had mentioned. The Wizards seemingly are actively tanking, but also their players are so bad, particularly on defense as is, that it's always going to be a good matchup against them anyway. They play at a fast pace, which is why the total is so high. But then also, the Knicks play such a tight rotation, and considering the trade they just made for OG Anunoby, which was essentially a 2-for-1. I know they got Precious Achiuwa in the trade as well, but Achiuwa is not really a massive part of the rotation. They traded away two guys in Emmanuel Quickley, who's playing minutes in the mid-20s, and then RJ Barrett, who's playing minutes in the mid-30s, really to get one piece back in OG Anunoby as a staple of the rotation. So now Thibodeau, who already likes to run really tight rotations, now is one less guy to play with. So now we're looking at all of the starters playing like 36 to 40 minutes each night. And I think it's going to be the case going forward. We've seen Thibodeau do this for entire regular seasons. So many players project well for us for the Knicks here. If you look at what I'm getting to from the Sims here, Hartenstein in 80% of lineups, Harten 80% of lineups, Randle in 70%, Jalen Brunson in 43%, Grimes, a little bit underweight to Grimes because he is projected for 26% ownership, getting to him in 18% of laps. This is also the chalk of the slate as well. 46.5% projected ownership to Hartenstein, 54% to Josh Hart. And I get it. It's a tight rotation. It's a good matchup. It's an up-paced game. So it's really hard to get away from the Knicks. And then even here, I'm only getting to 1% of OG Anunoby, and that's a number I expect to go up. I do see that right now in our projections, we only have Anunoby projected for 33.5 minutes. I think that's a little low, EMac. He played 37.5 minutes last game. Some of his other games with the Knicks, 2 games ago against the Bulls, he did get into foul trouble early. He only finished with 2 personal fouls, but he picked up those 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes of the game. So Anunoby, while he played 34 and 33 minutes his first couple games with the Knicks, I actually do think the 37.5 minutes he played last game is probably more representative of what his playing time is going to be going forward. So I think I'm going to end up with more of him later on the day as well. The Knicks are the best team to target on this slate, unless some crazy injury news happens, which could happen based on some of the other games we're going to be talking about soon.
All right. I didn't really mention, listed as doubtful would be DeLon Wright, Mike Muscala, and Landry Shamet. This is just kind of deck chairs, but only 8 teams in the player pool, so worth mentioning. Shamet missed the last game, so if anybody's going to play, it's probably him. He's questionable with the hamstring. Muscala really doesn't play back-to-backs. Danilo Gallinari doesn't really this year either, but they're only playing 12-ish minutes a game. And the one to watch out for is DeLon Wright. The team does like him. He's sometimes he'll start. He serves as a good third guard, but he missed a large portion of the early part of the season with a couple different soft tissue injuries. So he's kind of a person who could be rested on the back-to-back. If we knew he was getting better minutes, he's someone to always keep an eye on in the betting market for his over on steals. If he ever gets a spot start, or for whatever reason, based upon who is in or out for the Wizards, that he could get up to 25 minutes, bet the over on his half or even his 1.5 steals if you can get it that high at plus money. That's one to keep tabs on as someone who does still begrudgingly follow the Wizards. Adam, my little tip.
Yeah, so right now we have as the value play of the night. This is a fairly flimsy one in Jared Butler. We need a little bit more information to definitively know what's going to happen with the Wizards. A lot of people might be looking at this as like, hey, how come Jared Butler showing up in nearly all the lineups here? And it's because he's really cheap, even only projected for 17 fantasy points. This is often what will happen early in the day, EMac, where we don't have a lot of news yet. We do have some assumptions on players that are potentially going to be out for Washington. Delon Wright, that's the one who would impact Jared Butler. Mike Muscala, not really impacting Butler. But because there is only 4 games, there's a limited amount of value, and Jared Butler is one of the only cheap guys that were projecting to play decent minutes. That's why he shows up in so many lineups. This is certainly going to go down over the course of the day for a couple of reasons. Number one is we're going to get more injury news that's going to come out, which is going to create other value options that we could get to players who are not Jared Butler. And then also, I think there's going to just be, as if he's going to project for close to 20 fantasy points, his projected ownership is going to go up, and then he's going to rate out a little bit worse than the Sims by that measure as well. But as things stand right now, Jared Butler's one of the, if not the best punt plays on the slate, but I'm very skeptical that's going to hold through later in the day once more news comes out, because we do have some key injuries coming up, particularly in our next game.
Yep, absolutely. In the meantime, let's remind everybody, Better is the sponsor of our show today. $500 deposit match via them if you come in through the link in the YouTube description. I'm also going to drop in the YouTube chat the landing page here. You can get to any of our promotional landing pages on the Stochastic webpage. If you just look in the upper right, there's a line that says deals, and you can filter on any of the sports wagering sites. If we have Stochastic promotions going on, if we have DFS promotions going on, you can find those there. This landing page gives you the betting code. There's also the sign up code. There's also a code you can click through to get over there to Better, and it just tells you what states are they available in. Key thing to remember about them, they're one of the app-based sites. So while you can get to it here, you'll want to make sure that you get your sign up comes in on the link when you're on your phone, and then downloading the app that way. So just be sure that you get that all squared away. But that is for Better, who is a pick'em site. Lots of offerings in the main sports. Currently, they have basketball, football, and hockey available. A variety of player props, fantasy points, stats, etc. You guys know the drill, but it's offering that $500 deposit bonus, which is about 4 or 5 times what we see from most sites. So take advantage of that. Some good ones here in chat. I see someone saying, why do you keep saying Adams, you senile old man, or something along those lines? And I was thrilled. I typed out, I spelled mnemonic correctly. I made this up on the spot for you, Christopher. I said Adam in the AM, which is I only do morning shows with Adam, and then Neil at night, because I only do nighttime shows with Neil. Good. That's why I keep messing this up. And then I misspelled guy, because you can nail mnemonic but not spell guy correctly. If you can do that, it's a great day. G stands for guy. That is G for Greg, guy who gives me my schedule. There we go.
Yeah, the master of the schedule, the most complex document that exists on the planet, EMac, is that schedule document.
Having had to do that for a couple other DFS sites and how much content we have for shows, this is taking it to like 5 iterations beyond what I ever had to do. But let's get back to the fun here. Third game of 4, we have the Utah Jazz in Philadelphia. Back-to-back for both teams. You have the Jazz 12-point underdogs in this one. Philly is looking good at 238. Implied total. Nobody is on the injury report for the Jazz. This is a back-to-back and 3 and 4 for them. Again, remember I mentioned that 13 players played last night. They all played 12 or more minutes. For Philadelphia, this is also a back-to-back for them. They have a lot of folks that are questionable. So currently on the questionable list is Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris with an ankle, or Embiid's with the sore knee, Robert Covington with the knee, Furkan Korkmaz. Hey, if enough people are out, he could matter. He's dealing with an illness. And then DeAnthony Melton is dealing with a sore back. This is also a 3 and 4 for Philadelphia. Last night, Embiid played 36 minutes. Tyrese Maxey played 36, and Kelly Oubre played 31. The one person that could be coming back, I forgot to pull this up and check if he played last night, but it's Nicholas Batum. I'm pretty sure he's back, but he could be someone that to get some trickle down minutes, depending on. He's one of the few not on the injury list there, along with Oubre and Maxey. So that's sort of a wait and see approach, but I think we should consider this one with probably everybody healthy on both sides. Greg, take us through Utah, and then you can come up. We can come up with the if Embiid plays, if Embiid doesn't play scenarios for the Phillies.
So first with Utah, it's very hard to know what they're going to end up doing. This is not a team that's trying to compete. They played last night. I know the game was a massive blowout. They lost by 28 points. Same situation we talked about with the Celtics before, where I said the game was so lopsided. Maybe that does make the Celtics less inclined to rest players today. I kind of feel the same about the Jazz, but also the results of their games are so irrelevant to this team that it's very much in play that Lauri Markkanen could sit, that Jordan Clarkson could sit. So right now, nobody's on the injury report. Therefore, we have to assume that everybody's in. That is what all of our data assumes as well. And if that is the case, I do think that Jordan Clarkson is the highest upside player on the team. Nobody's massively popular, nor is there anybody I want to prioritize. But if I had to play one player from this team, it would be Jordan Clarkson, because EMac, the last time we saw this team in a competitive game, which was not last game, but it was 2 games ago, we ended up getting 38 minutes out of Clarkson. Now, yes, the game did end up going to overtime, but this is a guy in Clarkson who I think we could see play north of 30 minutes. He is a player who takes a massive amount of shots when he's on the court. If we look at the last handful of games for Clarkson, these are some of the usage rates, EMac. 24% in the blowout loss yesterday. Games were at 32%, 31%. Down game where he only had an 18% usage rate before that, 32%, 35%, 38%. Since coming back from injury, Clarkson is taking all of the shots he missed during the time that he was out for a couple of weeks. So considering his minutes have been on the upswing, his usage has been on the upswing, if everybody is in, including him from the Jazz, he's the player I'd prioritize the most. Hopefully there's a situation where maybe they end up resting like a Lauri Markkanen or something like that, which would mean even more usage here for Clarkson. He's the one guy that I have some interest in. He's only projected for 10% ownership, so I think he's a pretty good contrarian play because of his usage upside. And then obviously if Joel Embiid is out, that would create an easier matchup as well for the Jazz. As of right now, the betting market is just kind of pricing this game as if everybody's going to be in an 11.5-point spread. I think that's more or less what this game would be lined at if everybody was active. But we'll talk about the Sixers in a second. I'm less convinced that Joel Embiid is going to be in.
All right, and then this one here, the call out, in addition with Jordan Clarkson, team wants to showcase him. He is going to be someone that they can move in a deal, probably for a second-round pick. Maybe if they're lucky, a pick swap, but probably a second-round pick in the trade market, because Utah just really doesn't have much of a need for him as they kind of meander through this rebuild here. So with Clarkson getting 40 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 6 games, he's someone to definitely keep an eye on. And if he's coming off the bench, we're perfectly fine, because as Greg mentioned, he is launching all of the shots, which is key, because you got to get those gaudy point scores, because GMs like box scores. They don't ever look at tape or deeper analytics, Greg. It's all about how many points you can score.
Just the buckets.
Biscuit in the basket. Let's move to Philly. I'll let you set the stage here with the Embiid in, Embiid out. The key is, if he's playing, we've seen him put up 70 fantasy points in 30 minutes, 29 minutes, etc. This could be a good day off for him. But take it away.
If I'm the 76ers, I'm resting Joel Embiid today. He's listed as questionable on the injury report. He's been banged up for a little bit now. We just saw him miss. How many games did he miss? He
missed 4 games in 11 days.
Yeah, so he missed 4 games in 11 days. And now, in addition to that, this is a back-to-back for the 76ers. It's hard to, we need more information here.
And wait for it. Here's the information. The team is off until Wednesday. They could give him one heck of a break here if they give him the night off.
Everybody. I mean, so it's a game. They're at home against Utah. Even if Embiid and Harris sit, they're both listed as questionable, in addition to Anthony Melton, Robert Covington, Furkan Korkmaz. If all those players were to be out for Philly, it would decrease their win odds for sure, but they'd still be favored by 4.5, 5 points if you took all of these guys out for Philly today. Maybe 3.5. But that aside, if you could give all these guys off, like you had said, EMac, you're giving them almost a week off for a guy in Joel Embiid who was just banged up, isn't 100%, And well, I assume isn't totally 100% considering the time that he just missed. And now it's this back-to-back situation. I mean, it's also reasonable to think he isn't 100% because he's questionable on the injury report. So if I'm them, it seems to make the most logical sense to give him the day off. Here's the problem with that, though, EMac. What are the new rules for awards this year? You have to
play 65 games,
65.
And games only count when you play more than 20 minutes. There's some convoluted thing that if you play 63 games, if 2 of the games you played in at least the first and fourth quarter, so there's some wonky rules. I'm making it up, but you can count those. So it's all about this ratio and minimum threshold to qualify both for postseason awards. And I thought there might have been something to do with the All-Star game as well. That's less of a concern for us because they still have 40% of the season after the All-Star game, but it's for the postseason awards. And a lot of players have contract money involved in those, and the all NBA teams, which gets you into those Supermax contract deals. So this is important.
So for Embiid, he's already qualified for all that. But we've seen the last couple of years, Joel Embiid and the 76ers seem to care more about those awards than most individual players or teams do. And considering the games Joel Embiid's already missed, he's already sat out 7 games this year. He's on pace to be right around that threshold where, he's having a great season. He's the betting favorite to win MVP, but he totally falls out of the mix if he misses too many games. So on one hand, I think it's most logical for Embiid to sit. But on the other hand, too, the 76ers might be looking at and say, like, hey, we want to make sure this guy is eligible for award season because let's say something happens, he rolls his ankle again like he did a couple weeks ago, and that happens later on in the season. If he has to miss another 4 or 5 games at some point, he only has so many games left to miss to still be eligible for awards. So it's really hard because of all these different pushes and pulls. And once again, Joel Embiid is questionable. Tobias Harris is questionable. DeAnthony Melton is questionable. Covington is questionable. Korkmaz is questionable. So I really do feel like we need more information here. If everybody plays, Joel Embiid's the guy to get to, particularly if we end up getting enough value on the slate to make it easy to get to Joel Embiid. One of the reasons that we're getting to so much Jared Butler before is because it enables us to get to Joel Embiid, who's only projected for 24% ownership on a small slate. So if Embiid is in, he's really the only guy I have a ton of interest, or if everybody's in, I should say. Embiid's the only guy I have much interest from for the 76ers. Now, if Joel Embiid is out, if Tobias Harris is out, it's impossible to avoid Tyrese Maxey. He's going to have all the usage in the world. He becomes the top pay-up option on both FanDuel and DraftKings in that situation. As far as the value plays, it's really hard to say definitively because there's so many different iterations of players who could be in, who could be out. That, guys, check out Live Before Lock tonight with EMac and I, because we're going to have more updated information on the 76ers to bring to you guys about the best players to get to from the team at that time.
Do you think Embiid makes the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, pretty easily.
But does he make the Stochastic Hall of Fame? I see what you did there, Greg, trying to set me up. Hey, let's talk the Stochastic Hall of Fame. Dropping the link to the rules page there in chat. Basic gist of it. Go to the this page here. Download that Stochastic avatar. Upload that to your DFS site of choice. Finish first, second, or third. Top 3. No 50-way ties for first in the showdowns. But first, second, or third. Top 3. And you will get to choose a 1-month package on Stochastic of whichever one you want. You want to get the Max Sims package? Knock yourself out. That's in play. So how do you earn that? Well, you need to finish first, second, or third and tweet a screenshot showing that Stochastic avatar with your glorious victory to Stochastic HOF over there on Twitter. You'll be in the Stochastic Hall of Fame. Lofty will read your induction speech. You'll get to see your name on the screen, but you'll get that up to $200 value from the Stochastic Hall of Fame promo. Check that one out. Greg, we've got one more to go on our slate of 4. That means we're 75% of the way done. We have the Milwaukee Bucks in Houston taking on the Rockets. Milwaukee, this is a 3-4 for them, but it's not a back-to-back. They played Wednesday, Thursday, did not play last night, but obviously they're playing tonight. So Chris Middleton may get some rest. He's the only person that's really on the injury report at this time, but that's important because if he's out, that could move in, who are some of the guys? Bobby Portis, it could move in AJ, it could move in Pat Connaughton. It could give some other players some extra minutes that are kind of on the periphery or the tail end of the rotation at this point. So that one's important to see. The next game for Milwaukee is not until Monday. I wanted to call that out because, well, are they going to rest, Antetokounmpo? Probably not. They need to keep winning. This has been a tough Eastern Conference, And this is a very winnable game. They are 7-point favorites on the road. The Houston side, Dylan Brooks is going to be missing his 5th game with the sore oblique. You have Tari Eason, who has missed the last 2 games with the sore lower leg. We know that he has missed several games throughout the season while managing that injury, so we'll have to see what happens. This is a back-to-back as well as a 3-4 for Houston. Obviously, Eason did not play last night, but he could be back today. Houston lost to Minnesota 122-91. Jashawn Tate played 21 minutes as a starter. The other 4 starters played, the usual starters, played between 31 and 33 minutes. So no real back-to-back concerns for those guys other than sort of, is Eason going to play or not here? How are you liking the Bucks? And wow, what an improvement the Houston defense has seen this year. I did not see that coming with Fred VanVleet joining the team. And with Dylan Brooks missing so much time, they've still been pretty good on defense here.
Yeah.
What do you got for Milwaukee?
Yeah, so first is a betting angle on this game. I think the spread is much too wide. We've got the Houston Rockets as 6.5-point underdogs at home against the Bucks. I think relative to expectations coming into the year, the Bucks have probably underwhelmed a little bit, while the Rockets have been a team that's been better than people have expected. And a site that I like to use a lot that I talk about on the channel a good amount when I'm talking about just like overall valuations of players and teams, EMac, is dunks and threes. Well, this year, the adjusted net rating of the Bucks is, let's see, pulling it up here, 3.6. They're plus 3.6 points per 100 possessions, whereas then we have the Houston Rockets are plus 0.7 points per 100 possessions. So there's only a 3-point difference per 100 possessions between these two teams. And then you also have to consider that it's a game being played at home in Houston. So that being said, I think this game is probably closer to a coin flip than what the betting odds indicate. So if you guys want a betting angle for this game, I did bet the Rockets plus 6.5 at home. Also one that I posted in the OddsShopper Discord channel. If you guys do want to sign up at OddsShopper to get more bets for myself, there's a link for that below. And you could also use the promo code Greg for an extra 20% off there, EMac. That aside, as far as the Bucks, I'm hardly getting anything from this game. We've got Chris Middleton, kind of uncertain if he's going to play or not. It is 3 games in 4 nights for them. They've been very, very cautious workload as well. If you saw what they did last game, EMac, Middleton played the first half, didn't play the second half. It's because the workload for this team has been so high as of late. So many games played in short order. And then also is the back-to-back, which Middleton had not been playing on very much the last couple of years. So they're just being really cautious with him. It was also expected. But for tonight, if everybody plays, I'm not really going to be getting too much here. It's if I'm paying up for somebody, Joel Embiid is the guy, which then means here, not really find myself to Giannis, who's super expensive. It's only getting to 1% of Giannis. So if everybody plays from the Bucks, it's hard to find much value. I think everybody here is a little bit too expensive against a Rockets team that's played better, particularly on defense, than anybody could have anticipated.
Yeah, and that's just the fun of this season for the NBA. In addition to seeing some of the scores, I mean, once a week now we're getting a game that has a 260-point total, which is just wild. We saw Atlanta and Indiana. They played last night. But they also had that game earlier this season with 309 points scored in it. Yet we have some teams that have dramatically improved on defense. Those two things not really congruent, right? It's just kind of an intriguing situation here. So this has been a more exciting season than potentially we've had, and also fun to see because Greg, they're resting a lot of players these days. And that's that way earlier. I mean, we basically in November hit air quote April and March NBA. That was even with all the rules that we sort of hit on there with the postseason awards and different things like that. That was a weird development, in my opinion. But I guess with a lot of the compressed basketball over the 2.5 years since we went into the bubble because of the pandemic and all of that, it's just kind of a lot of players, key players especially, have had a pretty heavy workload. So. Anything else from this game? Anything you want to mention that you've seen there popping up on the Sims that you've been playing around there in the background?
Yeah, so for Milwaukee, nothing really. It's the team I do currently have the least amount of exposure to, and unless Chris Middleton is ruled out, that's probably not going to change all that much in terms of the amount of exposure that I get to Milwaukee. As for Houston here, the big news is that Tari Eason is questionable. If Eason doesn't end up playing, there's a couple of things that would end up standing out. Most notably, we could expect more playing time from Jabari Smith in this situation where Tari Eason doesn't play, as well as Jayshawn Tate. Tate's played fairly serviceably as of late. His price is a little bit more expensive, but he's been somebody who's been really popular on a lot of recent FanDuel slates. And I think that should continue, but only if Tari Eason is out. So Jayshawn Tate, he is a stronger play on FanDuel than on DraftKings. The lineups I've built here are for DK purposes. And currently we do have Tari Eason in our projections. As far as the other players here from Houston, nothing that I've like too big of stands on, hardly getting too much of Jalen Green. He's projected for 15% ownership, only in 3% of my lineups. Şengün, he's in a quarter of my lineups, which is also more or less even with the field. The big thing here is going to be keeping an eye on Tari Eason. If he sits, Jabari Smith goes from somebody who's only in 3% of lineups to probably double-digit percentage of lineups for me. And then also, like we said, that would end up helping Jayshawn Tate. And then Amen Thompson, the brother of Azur Thompson, he's also been getting more run for the Houston Rockets as of late. So on a slate where there's just not very many value options to get to, and Thompson, who did end up playing 20 minutes last game, the last 3 games he's played 20, 20, and 28 minutes. The 28 minutes was due to a blowout where they tried to get him extra run. But he is somebody also that we could start to look at as a punt play, really just because of the size of the slate. Not somebody to be looking at a bigger slate, but for a small slate like this, Thompson is somebody who is serviceable as a value option.
All right, I'm going to do a quick screen share here if you don't have anything else you want to point out from the Sims there, right?
Nope, nothing else. We've covered the 4 games.
All right. So I just wanted to quickly mention Odd Shopper here. Greg hit on that just a little bit. This is a phenomenal tool if you're in a state that has a sports wagering. We also have Pick'em information on here for the fantasy Pick'em sites. But just quickly, I wanted to highlight, you can filter this by sports, by bet types, so like player props. We could even pick the specific type if we wanted to look at PRA, points plus rebounds, assists, or points or assists or steals or whatever we wanted to look at. But I wanted to show you how quickly you can just choose the bet you want, click on it. It brings up all the different sports books that are offering these wagers. But this is something I want to remind you of how egregious the sites try to be, and how here I've got it showing by our best wagers. Why are they all unders? We want to root for overs. Well, the sports books know that as well. So they tend to push the limit on the overs, which makes the unders a little bit more favorable over the long haul of that extended time horizon. And they also make it a little tougher on the money side when you look at the overs. So you also don't want to get caught watching the paint dry, to borrow a quote from Hoosiers. If we look at Tyrese Halliburton here, points plus rebounds plus assists, it's the under of 41.5. DraftKings is giving us even money. Okay, that's a pretty decent wager, because we can see at several of the other books, they're all the way down to minus 119 and minus 120 at the sharper books of Pinnacle and BetMGM. But here's something that's even worse. Tipco, they're dropping it by a full point rebound plus assist. They go from 41 to 40.5, and they give you a worse odds. They put you at minus 100. So they're going lower, and they're giving you a worse number than DraftKings. This is why it's important to utilize this market-based approach. Look at the different odds. You don't want to just blindly bet at something, but if you wanted to have some fun, as we've seen Adam and Greg and others get limited at some of the sports betting, they're using these tools, finding the best bet, and then just putting their money on it. The other thing I wanted to mention, for most mere mortals like us, getting limited usually means you can't put more than 50 or $100 on any particular wager. Super sharps like Greg and Adam that have played a lot of volume may get limited more. But those of us who are ham and eggers, even if we start crushing the books, they're really not going to limit us by our usual wagering opportunity or bet size. Final thoughts before we get on out of here, Greg?
Yeah, that's news to me that I'm not going to be limited. But that
no. You are. You and Adam already are mortals like myself who have not been crushing them. And then what I know the limiting changes, right? Because a couple times I've been air quote limited to where I can only put 80 or $100 on a bet. I lose a few and then that goes away. So I'm probably right on the edge of being someone that could be limited. You and Adam had longer track record, Ben, etc. Lofty on some of the sites tend to get limited. When they do that, how punitive does it get for you on some of the ones you've seen? But you've also made $1,000 wagers and you've killed them on player futures and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah. So one thing that is still really nice about it is there are so many bets that get recommended by Odd Shopper that are plus EV, where even last year, where, I mean, most of the bets I was able to place were only like $20, $30, $40 bets on a lot of the sites. I was still able to make like $30,000 last year. I post all my bet tracking regularly. Also, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I post my pick it all the time with all my updated bet tracking, is even placing bets for not all that much money, just with the amount that OddsShopper recommends, it still was super profitable for me over the course of the year. Not exactly the same as when sports betting first opened and I could bet, like whatever I wanted across every book, but still it's a tool that very clearly pays for itself and is something that if I didn't work here, I would still be using.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you on the Pick'em site, you can see I just filtered it down to the operators and the Pick'em sites, and you'll see that they're only going to recommend the best line that's popping up. And you can tell that by looking at the far right column, but it's also giving you all the other books. One, if you're a wagerer, or two, you can really shop those Pick'em lines against what the market's doing. Because remember, the sports books, they not only can they do incremental points, 18.5 over or under, they can then shade the juice one way or the other. Most of the Pick'em sites don't quite do that yet. Some of them do. They start to say, hey, we'll give you, even money on this, or multiply it by 1.17, add another one that's 1.17, and another one that's 1.17, and that together gives you a 3x payout. Whereas if you do a couple 1.25s, it gives you a 5x payout for those three, right? So they're starting to try to mimic that somewhat, but it's something where you can tell if things are really standing out as a good bet. Because again, you don't have to worry about the vig or the juice on those sports wagering sites. But remember, sometimes they'll go with an even number, or so they won't have the hook on there, and they'll put a push out there. They usually just subtract that from your card. It doesn't disqualify your whole card. But that's something you also want to keep an eye on as well. Just because if you get a really juicy line and it's like, oh, it's minus 8.5, but the Pick'em sites may go to 9 even or 9.5. And if you're looking to bet the over, that may, like for strikeouts and things like that, that may not be a great deal. And maybe the only offer in town, but sometimes keeping that powder dry for the next good wagering opportunity that comes up. And as Greg said, they come up all the time. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to utilize OddsShopper for. These are all powered by the same models that do our DFS models, etc. It's $14.95 per week. That gets you access to the Discord with all of the different OddsShopper contributors. That'd be Greg, Aton, Ben, Makajeski, Eric, etc. Or it's $49.95 per month. So those are pretty good deals. We've dropped those prices significantly, consolidated some of our offerings because, hey, we recognize this is the way of the future. And if you're not doing this type of work when you're betting, you're just lighting $20 on fire per week at a minimum. Don't do that. Put it towards this. It's a better way to go. Anything else you want to mention before we slide on out of here, Greg?
No, just we're going to be back at it later tonight. EMac and I on NBA Live Before Lock, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So guys, come hang out. Come later. We should have like news eventually on Joel Embiid, whether he's going to be in or out. So later on the day, we're going to have more updated information for you all.
All right. So 2:00 NFL on this same YouTube channel. At 3:30, you're going to get NFL, or that was NFL Live Before Lock. That's going to be at 3:30, covering the two games on Saturday. And then Greg and I, after NBA Lock, we'll spend 10 minutes or so talking the showdown slate for the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts. But with that, we want to thank everybody for watching the show today. Stick around. We'll be back later. Good luck, gamers.